One of the craziest and scariest things that's ever happened to me took place about 3 years ago. I had just recently moved to a new city for work, and I didn't really know much about it. I had never been there before, but within my first few months of living there, I got to like it. I've moved a few times, and when I live in a new city, I always go to all the hiking trails and parks that they have. Some are good, some are not, but I always try to find out which are which. So one night, I was going to a brand new park that I'd never been to before. It had some trails and paths, and I went there after work in the later afternoon. When I arrived near the trailhead, there was a small parking lot where I parked my car. This park had a lot of woods in it, and the parking lot was sort of surrounded by it. However, nobody else was there when I arrived, so I figured that it would be a quiet hike. What I didn't take into account was the length of the trails at this particular park, as they were a lot longer than I recognized. So I started out and I went pretty deep through the woods, and then I turned into some open areas. I didn't see anyone, but I was enjoying it, until I realized that I was way out there and that it was starting to get dark. So at that point, I decided to turn back. As I went on the trail the way that I had originally come, it got darker and darker. Soon it was completely dark. It felt a little bit spooky to be out there alone at night. However, I knew the way back pretty well. After it being dark for a good 20 minutes at least, I finally made it back to the parking lot. I breathed a sigh of relief and got back to my car. At the time, I was driving this older crossover SUV. It had some problems and I needed a new car, but it actually ran pretty decent. So anyways, I got inside and began driving home. But right when I left, the warning dinged that I was low on gas, so I decided to stop. And it was probably about a mile down the road that I noticed this little gas station on a corner. So I pulled in and then parked at a pump. Nobody else was there, but the building was open. I got out of my car and went inside to pay for gas. However, right as I was getting inside the store, I heard what sounded like my car door opening behind me. This made me turn around. When I did, I saw a back door to my car was open and this random man was getting out of it. I froze where I was in complete shock and I continued to watch. This man then walked out of the gas station parking lot, across the street, and into the woods. I could not believe what I had just seen. I told the person working at the gas station that some guy had just come out of my car. I think he was almost as confused as I was though, because he hadn't seen it, so he didn't really know anything about the situation. So I ended up just paying for the gas and then I went back out and filled the tank. I looked in the back of my car and I kept looking at that spot of the woods to see if the man would come out of it. My car was empty now and the man did not emerge from the woods. But I realized that the guy must have been in there when I was driving. The back doors to my car didn't lock from the key remote that I had. They had the old kind of locks where you raise them to unlock the door and then push them down to lock it. And because my key thing didn't work, if the doors were left unlocked, you would have to physically push them down from inside the car, or else the doors would be unlocked. And to be honest, I never really paid much attention to it. I realized that my car must have been unlocked and the guy must have just walked right in. He had to have been in the far back of my car behind the rear seats though, or else I probably would have seen him for sure. But I was just glad that he was now gone. I went home after that. I was freaked out about the whole thing. I still am when I think about it. I was driving with some random guy hiding in the back of my car. It makes me really glad that I stopped for gas. Why the guy left my car, I'm not sure. Perhaps he thought that I knew he was there and I was going into the gas station to get help. That's my best guess. I don't think that he just wanted a lift from the park to that section of the woods. What his real intentions were with getting in my car in the first place, I really don't know. A couple of years ago, I was living by myself in an apartment building. To give you a little bit of background, I'm a woman and had lived in the apartment for almost a year. It was a pretty decent place, as it was only a few years old and for the most part had no problems. At this particular time, I was working an office job on weekdays, and the office was a fairly large building with a few floors and a parking lot. It was close to the city, but it was kind of on its own plot of land, so it was more private. There was a large parking lot in the front and then the building and grass around it. It had a small private drive that went up to it. So that's the basic background for the story. It really starts when one day I was at work and I left for the day to go home. I typically parked kind of in the corner and the parking lot would never be completely full as people were there at all hours. But when I left, I saw there was a guy sitting at a small table that was a ways off in the grass. I had never seen him before, but I really didn't think much of it. I did recognize or know most of the people around the office because it wasn't that huge and I had been there for a while. There would obviously be some people that I didn't know though, but really I thought nothing of it. However, maybe just a few days later I noticed the guy again, except this time he was sitting in a car that was parked not too far away from mine. Once again, this was when I was leaving. I saw the man look at me and then look away, but I just figured that he worked there now and maybe he was new and that was it. But the next time I saw him is what made me suspicious. I arrived to work early in the morning. I parked in my usual area and when I got out I was walking to the building and I noticed the guy. He was sitting in a car that was backed into another spot. However, the split second I made eye contact with him, I saw him duck down really fast and go out of view. I didn't know why he would do that. It was like he was trying to hide. This made me stop and continue to watch him because it was really peculiar. After a few seconds, there was nothing. But then he sat up part of the way, saw me again, and then quickly drove away in his car. It was really suspicious. I went inside to work, and I also realized that it was strange for him to be leaving at this hour. There were not too many people that would work all sorts of different hours like that. If I had seen him when I was leaving before, that meant he would probably work more normal hours, so why would he be leaving now early in the morning? That was another strange thing, and I told myself that I would keep an eye out for him going forward. After that though, I didn't see him for a few days. I was starting to forget about the whole thing. But then one day I was arriving back home from somewhere at night. As I got up to my floor, I turned a corner and I happened to see someone leaving their apartment. It was the same guy. He lived just down the hall from me, about 3 or 4 apartments down. I knew that it was him. When I saw him, I quickly turned back and went around the corner, and I don't think that he saw me. I heard him walking down the hallway, and I quickly went down the stairs until I figured he was gone. Then I went back to my apartment. I could not believe that the guy was living in my building and just a few doors down from me. Did he work at my job actually? Or was he stalking me or something? For a few days, I didn't know, and nothing happened. Then I got lucky. Maybe a week later, I was leaving my place one morning and I heard a door open down the hallway. I looked over and I saw that it was the same place that one guy lived. My first reaction was to go back inside, but when I looked, I saw that it was not the same guy who was leaving. It was another guy leaving that same apartment. I decided to go ask him who the other guy was. So I walked over and said hi to the guy. I had never seen him before either. But I described the creepy guy to him and asked if he knew who I was talking about. The man said that was his roommate. He told me that he didn't know him that well, but they had been living in the apartment together. However, he told me that his roommate left 3 days ago and he hadn't heard from him or seen him since. He said he hadn't answered any of his texts or calls. I asked him if he knew where the guy worked, and he told me yes, but when he told me the place the guy worked, it was not my company and not anywhere near it. I told the man what happened, and he said that he thought his roommate seemed odd and that he didn't want to live with him anymore. Then we went our separate ways. I never saw either of those guys again. I'm sure someone else moved into that apartment. I still don't know the full story, but it sure seems like that guy was trying to stalk me. This happened years ago when I was younger and more immature. I was driving back home really late at night, something that I did more often back then, a lot more often than I should have. It was kind of a long drive for me that time, as it was probably about an hour and a half to get back home. It was really late at night, but I didn't have anything going on the next day, so that was good, and so I didn't mind it too much. As I drove on the highway, no other cars were really around. I wouldn't say I was in the middle of nowhere, but there wasn't a whole lot going on in that part. When I was driving, I was extremely tired. I had already been tired before I left, but I figured that I could make it back home without falling asleep. However, the more I drove, the more I just wanted to fall asleep. I had no caffeine with me, and I should have had some before driving home, but I didn't. So I found myself in a dangerous spot. I tried to continue, but I was really struggling to keep my eyes open. I knew that I had to stop, so I took the next exit. I told myself that I was just going to find the nearest rest stop or gas station, or really anything. I just wanted a parking lot, and I would sleep in my car for maybe 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, and then I would continue. I just knew that I obviously could not drive home in that state of tiredness. So after getting off the highway, I quickly realized that there was nothing there. I had taken some random exit that didn't even have any businesses at all. Too tired to go back onto the highway, I just drove down this road a ways, maybe a mile, and then pulled over. It was clear that I wouldn't be coming up on any gas stations or any kind of businesses at all. It was just a road that was completely quiet, with just woods and wilderness surrounding it. There wasn't any lighting at all either, other than my headlights and the sky. But there was some space on the side of the road with gravel and rocks, and then there was a few feet of grass before the tree line. So I pulled just off into the gravel and then turned off my car and put my seat back a little bit. Literally, as soon as I did that, I fell asleep. I was that tired. The next thing I remember was waking up with it still being dark out. As soon as I woke up, I heard the sound of someone trying to open the back passenger side door to my car. They were repeatedly trying the handle. I looked back, but saw nothing. I remember I was looking back there for like 5 seconds, but nobody was in sight. As dark as it was, I would have saw someone there. I was very quickly woken up though, and now not tired at all. I figured that this person must have been ducking down, crouched down on the ground, and was trying to open my door. I didn't know why or anything, but I knew that I needed to get out of there. So I quickly fumbled around for my keys, found them, snapped my chair back up, and started the engine. The person was still trying to open the door when I had the engine going, and I put my car into drive and left. I drove down the street a ways. I then realized that I was going the wrong way from the highway, so I turned around and went back past the spot. When I got there though, I didn't see anybody in sight. I soon got back to the highway and drove the rest of the way back home. I was wide awake the entire drive. I arrived back pretty late, but at least I was safe. I still don't know who was trying to get into my car or why. It was one of the craziest moments ever. I never saw who it was. I used to work as an overnight shift tow truck driver. It wasn't anything intense, just sitting in a truck most of the night as the overnight calls for a tow were fairly scarce. When you were a driver on the overnight shift, you could either stay awake the whole time or catch sleep in your vehicle as long as you kept your radio at a high volume to wake you up if a call did come in. Most nights, I'd park near the front gate and nap in the truck. One night was no different as I reclined my seat, set an alarm on my phone, and passed out pretty quickly. At some point in the night, I woke up and I didn't know why. The radio was silent, my phone had no notifications, and everything looked normal. I sat up for a second, listened, didn't hear anything, and then laid back down. I figured it was just one of those random wake-ups you get sometimes. The next time I woke up, it was morning. My alarm was going off, and the sky was starting to get light. When I stepped out of the truck, I noticed dirt had been smeared along the side doors. At first, I thought that it was just from the previous day, but then I saw the marks on the windows. They were handprints. There were several handprints along the glass, on the driver's side, passenger side, and even on the back window. They were not my handprints, and I never touched the glass like that, so I stood there trying to make sense of it when one of the day shift guys pulled in. He parked, got out, and looked at me for a second like he was waiting for me to say something. I asked him if he knew what happened to my truck. He hesitated, then asked, "You don't remember?" I told him no. He said he'd come in at around 2:30 in the morning to grab his wedding ring he had left in the office because his wife was angry, and as he drove in, his headlights hit my truck. He thought that I was awake at first because someone was standing right up against the driver's side window. He said the person had both hands on the glass, leaning in like they were trying to see inside. He slowed down, thinking maybe it was me talking to someone, but then the person turned and walked away very fast, heading along the fence line before disappearing into the darkness. What bothered me wasn't just that someone had been that close. It was how long they might have been there, and what would they have done if my coworker's headlights hadn't lit up the lot. After that, I stopped sleeping in my truck. If I needed rest, I stayed inside the small office where the cameras were. At least there I could see what was outside. I'm usually a good sleeper, so the part where I woke up that night for no reason really has me question if it was for no reason at all. I might have woken up when someone was peering through the back or side windows watching me, and I had no idea. This happened just a few months ago. I used to drive to this local park to go jogging there literally every day. I would not always go at the same time, but I would always make sure that I went. Many times it would be in the dark. I didn't want to be jogging alone in the dark, but with my work schedule, sometimes that was the only time I could go. This park had a trail that looped around the entire place. There was a large open field, a spot with picnic tables and a playground, and then a wooded area. I would parallel park my car on this spot right between the wooded area and where it gets more open. The street that I would park on would always be really quiet. I arrived at the park one night like normal. Typically when I would jog, I would have my workout headphones in and play music on my phone. So on this occasion, I arrived at the park after dark and then set out on the trail to jog. It was a nice and calm night. Nobody else was out, and I was going to jog 2 laps around the entire trail. This would take me maybe 30 minutes or so. So when I was on my second lap, I was jogging through the wooded section of the path and had maybe 5 minutes to go. That's when my music stopped out of nowhere. I wondered why. So I took out my phone while still jogging but slowing down a little bit. I saw that I was getting a phone call, and then I stopped completely. When I looked at the number though, I didn't recognize it. I ignored it and kept jogging. After the call was done ringing, my music went back to playing, and they didn't call again. I continued, and then I was done soon after, and I got back to my car and went home. Whoever had called did not leave any kind of message or anything. I didn't really give the call any more thought after that. But the following night, I was on a similar schedule. I went to the park at not the exact same time, but around probably the same time in general. I once more started jogging and was by myself. Now, when I was in around the same spot at the same time, my phone started ringing again. I could not believe it. To that point, I had forgotten about the phone call the previous day, but this obviously reminded me. I looked, and I couldn't say for sure if I recognized it as the same number as the night before, but it obviously was. I mean, that would just be too much of a coincidence for it not to be. I started to get this creeped out feeling, so I decided to answer the call. I pushed accept and then put the phone up to my ear and said hello. At first, there was nothing on the other end of the line. Then I heard a man's voice. He said, "I'm behind you." And that's all he said. I was standing there on the trail, stopped, and I asked who he was. He didn't answer. Then it clicked to me that maybe he was actually behind me, and I turned around. I didn't see anything though, but it was really dark out. I didn't want to take any chances. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, then I quickly started sprinting the rest of the way, not jogging, but running as fast as I could. In this time, I didn't hear anything behind me. I still had my headphones in, but they were no longer playing music as I had paused it. I didn't look back because it would slow me down, and if I saw anything, it would really freak me out. I kept going, and what probably would have been 5 minutes of jogging turned into just a couple of minutes of sprinting. Then I ran out to my car in the street and got inside. Once I was finally there, I felt safe again and I locked my doors, and then I looked to the path before leaving. When I looked, I saw this man dressed in all black, including a ski mask, slightly emerge from the woods. He didn't come after me, but was just standing there looking in my direction. I was so creeped out. I quickly drove off and went home. I blocked the number, and I haven't been back to that park since. This happened sometime around 2010. My friend Carly and I were both 18, and we went to a house party on the other side of town. By the time we left, it was around 2 a.m., and we'd both been drinking, but not enough to feel out of control. We decided to walk back to her place instead of calling anyone. It was about an hour's walk, but we decided that the air and the walking would help us sober up. The route was simple, mostly straight along the main road with streetlights the whole way. Even though it was late, we had done the walk before and it wasn't a dangerous part of town. For most of the walk, nothing happened. There weren't many cars out, but every now and then one would pass. When we were maybe 20 minutes from her house, I heard a semi-truck coming up behind us. That wasn't unusual for that road, and it passed us slowly, louder than everything else had been all night. Right after it passed, something changed. It's hard to explain, but 1 second I felt normal and a little tipsy, and the next I felt completely clear-headed and alert in a way that didn't match the situation. My chest tightened, and I had this strong feeling that we shouldn't be there anymore. I didn't know why I felt like that. The semi-truck had continued down the road past us, and nobody else was around, but I couldn't shake it. I kept looking back down the road, expecting to see something. Carly noticed I got quiet and asked what was wrong. I told her we should get off the main road. Up ahead there was a small side street which wasn't connected in a way where cars could turn on it directly from where we were walking, but there was a break in the sidewalk where we could cut over. I told her that we should head for that side of the street because something didn't feel right. That was when we saw the headlights of that same semi coming towards us. Somewhere ahead it had turned around, and was coming back towards us on our side of the road now. It slowed as it got closer, but we had reached the side street and sort of jogged towards it as the semi slowed down. We turned back and saw that it stopped in the middle of the road, and the driver's door was opening as the driver, who was a man, came down to the ground of the street. That's when our jog turned into a sprint, as we made some progress about half a block down the side street before turning around and checking what the driver was doing. He had made his way out of the street across the sidewalk, and he was standing at the start of the sidewalk for the side street. It looked like he was going to call out to us or something, but he must have weighed his options and didn't want to leave his truck for too long in the middle of the street. He ended up turning around and getting back into his truck and driving away without chasing us any farther. That moment when the truck passed us the first time, there was no obvious reason to be afraid, yet somehow I knew, before anything had even started, that we needed to leave. I've had scarier things happen since then, but that's the only time I've ever felt something kind of like a warning, like something flipped a switch in my head and told me very clearly to run. I recently remembered a really scary thing that happened when I was in high school. I was living at home with my parents, and I believe I was about 16 at the time. So I remember that my parents were gone for the night and I was at home by myself. At probably around 9 o'clock, our dog found me and then ran to the door, indicating that he wanted to go outside. When this happened, one of us would usually put him on his leash and then take him out into the yard. He was a small dog, so he would just do his business and maybe chase a squirrel and then go back inside. Sometimes we would let him roam around a little bit. So I took him outside on this night to the spot where I normally did. Our yard did not have fences, which was the main reason why we would always take him out on a leash. The yard also went right up to this road that was not the typical neighborhood road. It was a little bit busier, mainly during the day obviously, but it was a little bit higher up from our yard, and it had a speed limit of like 35, which is kind of fast for a street that you live off of. Plus, it was very narrow. There was like no space at all from the road to the yard, so it was a little weird, but I got used to it. Anyways, I took the dog to the spot in the yard that was kind of off to the side of the house but also in front of it. It was a quiet night by now. After being outside for maybe a minute or so, I saw headlights in the distance and a car then drove past. This was not unusual, but it always felt like cars were really close with how the road was to the yard. My dog still wanted to be outside and he was sniffing stuff and walking around, and I didn't mind being outside for a bit as it was nice out. So maybe a minute later, a car came from the other direction. This wasn't unusual until as it was passing by, I realized that it was the same car from before. Now that was a little strange, but still not the weirdest thing. However, maybe less than a minute after that, the car drove by again, this time a little bit slower. It was really dark out and the windows were somewhat tinted, so I could not see who exactly was driving. However, I didn't recognize the car at all, and it was a new-looking white-colored SUV. After driving by slowly, I saw it go down the street a short ways and then turn into a neighbor's driveway. By now, I kind of had a bad feeling about it. I wasn't sure if this person was just lost or what, but when I saw them starting to back up into a neighbor's driveway, I knew they were going to turn around and come back down the street again. I had enough. I decided to just go back inside. My dog didn't want to go in yet, but I tugged on his leash and we quickly walked back to the house. I got to the door just as the SUV was now starting to drive back towards our house. When I got inside, I watched from the window as it passed by very slow. But then, the car surprisingly turned into our driveway. As much as I had been maybe overly suspicious by going inside, I was now completely shocked to see this. I didn't really think that the car was going to go to our house. At that point, I quickly locked the door and then closed the blinds of it. I went into the living room and thankfully the other windows were covered. But I heard the sound of a car door opening and closing and I got really nervous. However, moments later, I heard the sound of the car driving away. So I was curious and I went over to a window. By the time I moved the blinds enough to see, the car was now gone and I didn't see anyone. So I was thinking and hoping that they left. I had no idea why they turned into our driveway, and I didn't know why I heard the door opening and closing, but I was glad that they were seemingly gone. I was actually starting to feel a little better about this whole thing. But then I heard the sound of a knock on the back door to our house. That sound made me extremely nervous and scared. I didn't dare go back there. Why would somebody be knocking on the back door? I went to the phone and I called my parents. Meanwhile, whoever was there knocked again. I told my parents that somebody was at the back door and they said not to answer it and they would come home now. They said that I should call the police, so I got off the phone with my parents to call the cops, but at that point, I no longer heard the knocking. It had stopped sometime in the 2 or 3 minute phone call with my parents. The person had knocked maybe a total of 3 or 4 times and then stopped. After not hearing anything now for a few minutes, I hoped once again that they had left, so I carefully made my way over to a back window and looked out. When I did not see anything. Of course, it was very dark out, and there was also trees back there and stuff, but it made me feel better now to see that there was no longer somebody at the back door to the house, and I didn't see them anywhere else either. So I decided not to call the cops and just wait for my parents to get home. Things were fine for the next half hour or so. I didn't hear anything. Then my parents arrived back. They entered the house, and they said that when they pulled into the driveway, they saw a man running out of the backyard. When I heard that, it really freaked me out. That meant that whoever had knocked on the back door did not actually leave the yard. They were there the entire time. But when my parents got home, they finally left. My dad went out and looked around, but whoever was there was no longer in sight. They could have gone anywhere though. I still have no idea who was driving the car or who was in the backyard. It must have been 2 people if one of them drove away and the other then went into the backyard. But it was really creepy. I drive a refrigerated truck and deliver food and meals to different schools. My shift starts at 3 a.m. every day, as I have a lot of stops, and the food needs to be there at a certain time so it can be prepped or heated on time for the kids. One of my routes goes up to a small school on a hill outside of a village. The school itself sits off the road, and there are a few houses nearby, but not close enough to provide any light. I always get there around 4 a.m. There are no streetlights out there, so it's just my headlights out there as far as the source of light. I usually leave the engine running, so the beams hit the wall near the delivery door. Everything outside that cone of light is just black. That morning started like any other, as I parked, unloaded the crates, stacked them inside the side entrance, signed the sheet, and then headed back out. When I got back to the van, I realized that I needed to take a leak before the next stop. I stepped behind my vehicle near this area of tall grass and went down the mountainside for a while. Out there it's darker than you'd expect, and I was facing downhill while I stood there, looking out over the faint lights of the town miles away. You could see the sky clearly too, so I was watching the sky as I was peeing. As I was wrapping up, I lowered my head back down to my normal sight line. A figure moved across those distant town's lights, in front of me by less than 50 feet, as a head and shoulders had blocked the town's lights briefly. It pretty clearly looked like a head and shoulders, but I wasn't 100% sure, as I was hoping that it was something else. I wouldn't have been able to hear any footsteps or noises of the person walking around because of the truck's engine idling. I finished up quickly and started moving along the side of the truck, wanting to get back inside fast, heading for the driver's door. I didn't want to turn my back to whatever I thought I saw, but I also could barely see a few feet in front of me in that direction. I got in the truck, shut the door, and locked it right away. I shifted into gear and started to pull forward. As I did, I checked the side mirror, and once again saw a human figure near the back of my truck, slightly illuminated by my taillights. It confirmed I didn't imagine it. There was someone out there at 4 a.m. in complete darkness, pitch black, walking there for some reason. They had just passed a little bit in front of me initially, and I'm sure that they could see me clearly with the nose of the truck and the headlights pointed at the wall behind me. For some reason, this person followed me up from the grassy area all the way to the back of my truck, and peeked out at me for whatever reason as I got into my truck. I can't imagine a sane reason for anyone to do that. The holidays are coming up, so I don't have to deliver to that school for a few weeks, but I'm starting to dread every visit I must make there in the future. This happened to my older sister when she was at college in San Diego. My sister and her friend were playing tennis off campus one night, and her friend decided to leave early to go home. My sister decided to stay a bit longer for whatever reason. Anyways, she packed up and started walking back to her car in the parking garage while chatting on the phone with her then boyfriend, who is now her husband. As she reached her car in the garage, she noticed that she had a flat tire. It was kind of odd considering that it had been fine a couple of hours ago, but nonetheless she wasn't too concerned. Her boyfriend offered to hop in his car and make the 10-minute drive to come by and help her repair it. As she sat there waiting for her boyfriend to show up, a man appeared seemingly out of nowhere, and she didn't notice where he had come from. She described him as a younger guy, well-dressed and well-groomed. They struck up a conversation, and after a couple minutes, he asked her if she needed any help fixing the flat. She politely declined and mentioned that her boyfriend was on his way to fix it. The guy said he really wouldn't mind helping her and that it wouldn't take long at all. Seeing how it was late and she wanted to go home, she gave in. As they began to walk to the trunk of the car to get the spare tire and tools, her boyfriend pulled around the corner in his truck. After he arrived, he got out and talked to my sister for a second, and he noticed that the guy who wanted to help was walking down the closest stairwell in a pretty quick hurry. They didn't think much of it at the time and went to the trunk and got the tools and spare tire. But when they got to the trunk, they noticed that it was not latched and was cracked open. They opened the trunk, and inside they found multiple ropes, a roll of duct tape, and some zip ties. None of those items belonged to my sister. They immediately called the police and started looking for the guy. The police showed up and talked to my sister, but they never found the guy. I still get chills when walking through parking garages late at night, even though I wasn't even there with my sister that night. A couple of years ago, I used to work at a store that was in town. During this time, I lived in an apartment building that was only like a mile down the road, so I would often walk to and from work every day, which was not too bad. Most of the time that I worked, I would get off pretty late at night. I would take this one sidewalk along a road that was busy during the day, but much more quiet at night. Then I would turn and go a block down or so before arriving at my apartment. One time when I worked, I got off at about 11 o'clock p.m. I left work and then was going to walk home again like normal. Most of the time when going home, I would not see anybody else. Occasionally, I would encounter one or two people maybe, but it was never a big deal. Obviously, this late at night, things were quiet. So I walked along the sidewalk for probably more than half a mile. The road was to my right, and to my left, at this stretch of the road, was a small neighborhood of townhouses. Coming up on the left was a stretch of woods, and then they had trees in the small space of grass between the sidewalk and the road. It was dark, but every so often there was a street light. So as I continued, I was looking at my phone for a couple minutes. I looked up and I noticed up ahead there was now a man just standing in the middle of the sidewalk facing me. He was a really long ways up though, probably several hundred feet. I couldn't make out much about him other than that he was just standing there in my direction. As I continued to walk towards him, I started to get a bad feeling about it. Why was he just standing there in the middle of the sidewalk, not moving and looking at me? He didn't wave or anything, and he wasn't on his phone or doing anything like that. I thought for a second that maybe he was at a bus stop, but the further I looked up there and the closer I got, I realized that it was not a bus stop or even that close to one. I considered for a second about turning around and just walking away, but I told myself not to. I was tired and wanted to go home, and I figured that it was nothing. Soon I was probably within 100 feet of the guy. I was getting more and more nervous, but at that point the man then turned and started walking off the sidewalk, but he was heading into the woods. It was strange because there was no path there or anything like that. This was just a really dense spot with tall grass, bushes, and many trees. I really didn't know what he was doing, but I had a small sigh of relief from him just getting out of my way, so I continued. Still, with the guy now someplace in the woods, this didn't make it seem any less weird. It really seemed even more weird now. For the first few seconds that he walked into the woods, I sort of heard the trees and stuff moving from him walking in there, but as he was farther away, and once he really got in there, I stopped hearing anything, and obviously I couldn't see him. Soon I approached the spot where he went into the woods. I was nervous that he could jump out or something. When I got to the spot, I walked faster, and I also went slightly off the sidewalk and into the grass by the road. I glanced over and didn't see or hear anything. This made me feel better, and I kept quickly walking back home. For the next 50 feet or so, I glanced over my shoulder a few times just to make sure that he didn't come out of the woods, and he didn't. So now I was more than halfway back, and I just had to walk farther down the sidewalk. About 5 minutes later or so, I had finally reached the corner where I would turn, and then my apartment was just across the street. So I was like 25 feet from the corner, and for whatever reason, I looked behind me. When I did, I saw the same guy. He was now on the sidewalk a long ways back, but jogging in my direction. And he was jogging in this weird way where he had really long strides, and he was pretty fast. My heart started racing instantly. I quickly walked faster and made it around the corner. The bushes there at the edge of the business property on the corner would make it so that the guy couldn't see me until he got to the corner. So then I started sprinting. I went a short ways and didn't even bother to get to the crosswalk. There were no cars on the street at that moment, so I just sprinted across the street and then got to my apartment building. I didn't bother to look back, and I made it to the door and went inside. Then I went up to my apartment on the second floor of the building and I felt safe again. My windows were covered and I didn't bother to look out of them. I knew that I was safe now, and I didn't even know if the guy knew where I went or if he had stopped following me. I assumed that he did, but I was creeped out from the experience. So I stayed up for maybe another hour or so and then I went to bed. I got into my bedroom and turned out all the lights. My apartment just happened to be at the front of the building on the second floor, like right above and to the left the main front door of the building. So sometimes in the morning or even late at night, I would hear people coming and going, but it was never a big deal and it wasn't too loud. That night, as I laid in bed, I heard the sound of someone knocking loudly on the front door to the apartment. At first, I thought nothing of it, but then it happened again. I was curious, so I got out of bed and went to my window. When I looked, I saw the same man. He was knocking on the door to try to get in. And literally a second after I saw him, he looked up right at me. I quickly closed the blinds again and then ducked down, but the guy stopped knocking. I laid there on the floor, too freaked out to move for a few minutes. After a short time, I carefully went to the window again. The man was now gone. I hadn't heard the door open, so I didn't think he got in, but I was really freaked out now. I went to my front door and double-checked that it was locked. Then I tried to watch TV to relax and told myself that it was fine. Eventually, I was able to fall asleep, but I decided to stop walking home at night. For several weeks after that, I was able to get rides home from coworkers because I lived so close and it wasn't a problem for them. I never saw that guy again. I don't live in that building anymore, but the whole experience still freaks me out to remember it. That guy must have followed me, and then he was still at the building like an hour later. I will never forget seeing him jogging towards me or seeing him look up at me in my apartment. I used to drive a semi-truck years ago, and it was a job that I had for a while. I still drive trucks, but not semis, and it's a completely different schedule for me now. But anyways, probably my scariest memory from driving a semi took place in my last year on the job. It was nighttime and I was driving on the highway. I don't even remember what state I was in, but it was pretty late at night and I would be pulling off to get some sleep soon. There were a number of truck stops on this highway, but by now it was getting close to midnight. I knew where I was planning to stop for the night, and it was maybe 30 minutes to an hour up the road. By this point, there were not many other vehicles out at all. As I drove in the right lane, I was going around the speed limit of 70 miles per hour. I remember that a car appeared behind me, went into the left lane, and then passed me. It then went in front of me to the right lane. But after going in front of me, the car then started to slow down a little bit. If I was going 70, this car was probably now going like 68. I realized that I was slowly gaining on him, and I was going the complete same speed on cruise control. This annoyed me slightly as I got closer and closer to the car, because I had not changed my speed, but he slowed down. I was wondering if the car would realize that I was gaining on him and speed up, but it did not. So then I switched lanes to go around him. I sped up, passed the car, and then went back into the right lane when I was by. However, moments later, the car sped up and went into the left lane to get around me. This person must have realized that they had slowed down too much. So very quickly this time, the car passed me going much faster. It went a good ways ahead and then changed lanes when it was pretty far in front of me. I figured this guy was going to go faster this time and not let the same thing occur. At first he was going at a good speed and way up the road, but then I started to slowly gain on him once more. This was really annoying. I was pretty sure that it was all on accident, because why would somebody intentionally do something like this? It was a pretty absent-minded thing to do. When I got like right up to the guy's bumper, after having not changed my speed at all, I had to go around him again. So I did. This must have really made the guy mad. I don't know if he thought that I was trying to race him or if he was trying to play games with me, because he started speeding up when I was in the left lane to pass him. I just said, okay then, and I moved back over to the right when he was in front. Then he did something crazy. He went into the left lane and started slowing down. I was still maintaining the same speed and in the right lane. Then I started to pass him because he slowed down so much, and I didn't know what he was doing. But then he sped up and then cut right in front of me. He left hardly any space. I couldn't just slam on my brakes and stop, so I nearly hit him. He went a little faster, but was driving really close to me. When he did this, I honked at him, as this was seeming to become a road rage incident. I didn't bother to switch lanes. I knew that the truck stop I was planning to go to was coming up just ahead, so I kept driving with the guy right in front of me. He went a little farther ahead, but not by much. Then when we got to the exit, I pulled off at the very last second to the truck stop. I saw the car slam on his brakes, but it was too late and he missed the exit. I didn't know what he was trying to do now, but I was glad to get away from him. So I pulled in and parked my truck for the night. Then I went in the building for a short time before returning to my truck to go to sleep. I got inside, covered my windows, and went to the back area where my bed was. However, not too long after getting back there, I heard the sound of someone banging on my door. It was very loud and persistent. I did not know who that could be. I got up and went over to the door. Before opening it, I looked out. There I saw some random guy. I didn't know who he was, but then I realized that he must be the driver of that car. He started yelling at me to come out and fight him like a man and stuff like that. I told him to go away. I had no interest in fighting that clown. After his yelling and banging on the door persisted, a few other truckers nearby started yelling at the guy because he was being really annoying. He eventually stopped and yelled at me some more, as well as the others who were annoyed with him. Then he stormed off and left. I could not believe it. The whole thing was his fault because he wasn't paying attention. Driving a truck is a lot harder than driving a little measly car like his, but he didn't seem to realize that. I live by myself in this kind of older, not so nice apartment. It's a building that has units on a bottom floor and a top floor. Mine is on the bottom, and my door opens up to the outside. In front of the building is a parking lot, and to the side and back there's kind of a grassy area and some trees. That connects to a neighborhood next door. And my building really isn't that big. There's maybe 20 or 30 apartments in it total. So anyways, a couple of months ago I was at home by myself. Normally I would just be playing video games in my room or something like that. I think that's what I was doing on this night, and I remember that it was probably close to midnight and my cell phone started ringing. I looked at it and saw that the number was from my area code, but I didn't recognize it. I didn't know who it would be, but I decided to answer. Based on the fact that it was a local number, I figured it wasn't a scam call. Plus, it was late at night, which is unusual to get a call at that time. When I answered, I heard the voice of what sounded like a young woman. She said, "Can you come outside?" I asked who was calling because I didn't recognize her voice. She didn't say. Instead, she just repeated herself, asking for me to come outside. I asked what she needed and if she was okay. Based on the tone of her voice, she sounded borderline desperate and sad. She still didn't answer me. She told me to come outside again. I asked her where she was, but she wouldn't say anything else. She just kept repeating herself. This random call out of the blue was making me feel really weirded out. I was trying to figure out what the situation was. This woman was not giving me any information other than just telling me to come outside over and over again. But then she stopped saying anything. I was still asking her to give me more information, but there was nothing on the other end. She didn't hang up, but I didn't know what she wanted. I just heard silence on the other end of the phone. So I got up and went to my windows and looked out, but I didn't see her or anyone. Around the apartment building, it would get pretty dark and quiet at night, because the road off the building was a rather quiet one, and the grass area surrounding it didn't get much activity being by a neighborhood. I decided that I would go outside. I asked again if she was there, but she still didn't answer me, so I hung up the phone. I went to my door and walked outside. When I got out there, it was completely silent. The only reason I was going out there was because I thought maybe the woman needed help. But why wouldn't she answer me? I took a few steps out and looked around. Then I walked towards the side of the building by the grassy area. Still, there was nothing. I was looking around, wondering if she was over there. When I got almost near the back of the building, I heard a noise. Someone was there, but they were out of my sight. I stopped because I just had a bad feeling. I called out asking who was there, but I got no response, so I didn't go any closer. Just then, I heard the sudden sound of at least 2 people walking. They were behind the building, and it sounded like they were heading somewhere quick. I can't say for certain if they were walking in my direction, but my instincts just told me to get out of there, so I did. I quickly jogged back around to the front of the building and then went back in my place. I looked out of my front window, but nobody came around. And literally like 30 seconds after getting back inside, my phone rang again. It was the same number, and I answered it. The same woman once more started telling me to go outside again. This seemed fishy to me now. I tried to get her to tell me anything. I asked her where she was, who she was, and why she was calling me. But the only thing she would say was, "Can you come outside?" So finally, I said that I was calling the police. At that point, she stopped talking and hung up. After that, I contemplated actually calling the cops, because the fact that she hung up when I mentioned it seemed sketchy. But I figured that if the police came out there, they wouldn't find anything. I'm sure if this was some kind of a setup or a trap, the people would be long gone by then. So I just looked out of my windows for a few more minutes and then went back to what I was doing. Nothing ever came of it. I'm not sure if it was some kind of a setup or what. The biggest mystery to me, though, is how this woman got my number and who she was, because I really don't know. I drive a delivery truck around the city where I live. I mostly make deliveries to businesses all across town, and in some neighboring cities as well. For me, I will often work at night, which has its ups and downs. One of the nice things is there's less traffic to deal with generally, but it also led to one of the scariest moments that I've had on the job. It was nighttime, pretty late, and I had a delivery to a local business that had recently closed for the night. I had delivered there before. It was located in a little bit quieter part of town and was located in a sort of strip mall. But by now, all or most of the businesses were closed over there, so it was a large parking lot with just a few vehicles in it. I would typically just park out front and make the delivery to the front door, seeing as they were closed. This time, I parked out front and then stopped, but before I could get out, I saw this guy come walking up to my driver's door. He motioned for me to go around back and said that they needed the delivery in the back of the building this time. I didn't think much of it and just said okay. So I drove my truck forward, turned it around, and then started going to the back of the building. This strip mall parking lot had a narrow road that went from the side of the building around to the back of it. Back there it was much quieter, had some delivery areas, and bordered a woods. With the fact that some of the businesses there would take deliveries around back, I did not think that it was weird. But I had never had to go around back there when I delivered to that company before. I drove around, and when I got to the back area, it was really dark. There was literally nothing and no one other than some dumpsters. But then there was one SUV that was randomly parked there and it looked like it was running. I thought it was kind of strange, but I didn't really give it that much thought. I wasn't exactly sure where the business was that I was delivering to, so I was trying to focus on that because I had never been to that spot before. Plus, they did not have signs in the back for what they were. I slowly drove to where I thought it would be. When I was figuring that out, my cell phone rang. It was the same business that I was delivering to. I answered, and a guy asked me why I left. I told him that I was instructed to deliver around back. He told me no, and asked who told me that. This whole situation was now feeling sketchy to me. I backed up my truck to now move back to the front. When I did, I saw the guy walking around who had told me to go around back. He saw me backing up and signaled for me to stop. I yelled at him saying that I was on the phone with them and they were saying to go to the front. The guy then told me no and to hang up. This did not seem right. I drove out of there and back around the building to the front. A guy who I had seen before when I had delivered there came out of the building from the front door and walked over to me. Then I made the delivery as usual. Meanwhile, the other guy was nowhere in sight. As I was doing the delivery, I saw the SUV that I had seen in the back drive out and leave. It made me think that that could have been a setup. The one guy who had talked to me didn't even work at the business. Maybe he and the guys in the SUV wanted to rob me or something. I don't know for sure, but it's a pretty reasonable guess. After that, I didn't see them again. I delivered a few more times to that business, and nothing like that happened. Looking back, I'm really glad that the owner called me when he did. If not, who knows what could have happened. This happened when I was a kid, about 12 years old. At that time, I lived at home with my parents and my younger brother who was 10 at the time of this story. Our house was one level with a basement and in a pretty typical neighborhood. We had a front yard, a backyard, both of which were not that large, but enough space to hang out and do stuff. So one evening, it was about sunset and getting dark. My little brother had just gone outside a little bit earlier. He was always running around playing sports and was really active. My parents were in the living room, I think, which was at the front end of the house. And then I was in my bedroom, which was at the back end of the house. I had a window that looked out to the backyard, except I was sitting at my desk and doing homework facing in the opposite direction. As I was there in the middle of my homework assignment, I heard something hit my bedroom window behind me. I didn't even bother to look. I figured that it was my brother either throwing a ball against the window or messing with me. He would often do stuff like that. A few minutes later, it happened again, and I still didn't look. But then maybe a minute after that, I heard a knocking at the window. This was annoying, so I decided to turn around and see what my brother was doing. When I turned around, though, I saw that nobody appeared to be there at the window. Now, I didn't turn around and look immediately when I heard the noise. It was a little bit delayed. It was also dark outside, but I would have seen my brother if he was right at the window. I didn't really think too much of it still, because I figured that my brother just walked away, and so I turned back around and continued my homework. Probably less than 30 seconds later, I heard the front door to our house open and close really fast. Then I heard my brother yell something, and I heard my parents' voices. I couldn't make out what they were saying, though. My brother then ran down the hallway and stopped at my bedroom door, which was open. He then told me that he saw some creepy guy in our backyard. I could not believe it. I asked my brother if he had knocked on my window, and he said no. I realized that it must have been the creepy man that he was talking about who had knocked on my window. We both went to the window and looked out of it, but we didn't see anyone, and it was also really dark back there. Our dad went outside and looked for the guy. However, he came back in a short time later, and he said that he didn't find him and he must have left. My brother went on to say that he had been in the front yard. Then he went around back, and as soon as he got in the yard, he saw some guy standing near the house, and he was standing sort of near my window. So it was not my brother at all causing those noises at my window, but some random man. That really gave me the creeps. My brother must have scared him off because he left right after. I was paranoid for several days, but the man never returned that I'm aware of. I recently remembered a really weird and creepy thing that happened back when I was younger many years ago. I was probably about 13 or 14 years old, and I was living at home with my parents. Our house was in this quiet but average neighborhood, and we had a 2-story house. My bedroom was on the second floor towards the front of the house. During this time, I loved playing video games, and I still do. But it was the summertime, so I didn't have school, and I would sometimes just game all night. So one time when I was staying up all night playing video games, I was the only one awake in the house. My parents and sister were long asleep in their rooms. I remember that it was really quiet, but at one point, I heard the sound of a louder vehicle moving in the distance down the street. I happened to just be kind of sitting by the window anyways, so I paused my game and looked out. When I did, I saw just the front part of a semi-truck coming down our street at a slow rate of speed. So it was just the tractor and no trailer. The road curves, so I saw it turning the corner and then going on the straightaway that our house was on. My bedroom light was off and my window was mostly covered, but I could see pretty well. The truck had no trailer, but it still made a much louder noise than the average car. I watched it slowly drive down the street and towards our house. I had never seen a truck like this on our street before. I wasn't sure if someone who lived here drove a truck or what, but it was unusual, so for that reason I continued to watch it. The truck seemed to only go slower as it approached our house. Then when it got to about even with the front yard, it surprisingly stopped. I got a tad bit nervous because this was really weird. I could not see at all who was driving. Then the truck started to reverse. It backed up very slowly and pulled over to the side of the street. Now, it was not directly in front of our house, but it was on the side of the road and between our house and the next door neighbors, and it was on our side of the street. I didn't think that the neighbors had a truck or anything like that, but maybe it was someone that they knew or something. After the truck stopped, it just sat there for over a minute. Nobody got out of it in that time. I thought that it might just be a guy driving a truck who was looking for a place to sleep. However, after maybe another minute or so, I saw the door open. When it did, a man stepped out. I didn't recognize him. I also really didn't see him that well, as it was very dark out, and from my angle being up, I couldn't really see his face. So the man then started walking into the grass and then into our yard. I kept watching, and my heart was now racing. The man walked right up to the house and then stopped at a window. He then appeared to look inside. I was pretty much shocked and didn't know what to do. The man looked through the window with his hands up against it for like 30 seconds probably. I thought that he was going to break in. But then the man backed up and moved away from the window. He then walked back through the yard and returned to his truck. Then he got inside, and probably 30 seconds later, he drove away. I kept watching the street for a while, but he didn't come back. The whole thing left me very confused. But after that night, I never saw him again. I'm still not sure what to make of it. Maybe he was thinking about breaking in or something like that. But why would he drive there in a semi-tractor like that? It seemed really weird. This is something really weird that happened not too long after I got my first job. When I was 17, I got a job at Walmart as a cashier. I was young and I had never had any kind of job experience before, so I didn't really know what I was doing very well. I don't remember a ton from my first shifts, but this happened on what I think was my third or fourth time working there. As a cashier, I would work mostly in the afternoon until sometime at night. So on this night, it was getting later and I would be getting off of work soon. To that point, it had been a pretty average shift as far as my memory goes. Things were a little bit busy earlier, but then it got quieter and quieter the later at night that it got. As I was approaching the end of my shift, I had maybe half an hour left when a coworker approached me. She came up and asked me when I was off, and I told her that I was off pretty soon. She then told me that when I had about 10 minutes left to leave my check lane and go to the back room and pointed over to it. She said that she needed help with something and it wouldn't take long. So I told her okay, and then she left and I stayed at my checkout. I had never seen that woman before, but there were a lot of coworkers at the Walmart that I had never seen, as the stores are always very big. So things were quiet for the rest of my shift. With 10 minutes left, I did what I was told. I turned off the light to my checkout and then I walked to the back of the store. I didn't know what I needed to help with, but I didn't question it. Being new to the job, I was willing to do whatever they asked, even if I was just hired as a cashier. So I went to where I thought I was supposed to go. There were the swinging doors to the back room area, and this was in the back corner of the store kind of. It was quiet over there, and when I got in, it looked like the typical back room. However, I didn't see anyone. I took a few steps in, and then I heard the same woman's voice. She called out my name, but she was way farther down, and I could not see her. I said that I was there, and she told me to go down by her. I honestly could not see the woman at all, but if you've ever been to a Walmart back room, I'm sure some are different, but most of them have boxes everywhere and they have sort of their own little aisles. It was all organized, but not as clearly and presentable as on the sales floor, and there's lots of other random boxes and equipment around. I could tell that she was in the far back, but I couldn't tell exactly where. I started walking and she yelled at me, "Over here." I turned and started going towards her. I made it maybe 20 feet and I still couldn't see her. That's when I heard the door open behind me. The same swinging doors that I had just gone through. I looked back and saw a man there who also worked at Walmart. He too I had never seen before, but he asked me what I was doing. I stopped and I told him that I was asked to help with something back there. He came over to me and he asked me by who. I didn't know the woman's name and I told him that. He looked confused and he said that he didn't know who that would be. Then he called out asking who was there. This time though, there was no response. We walked farther up and then we heard someone walking away kind of quickly, but they were still out of view. When we made it kind of around the corner a ways up, there was an exit door that was sort of propped open. I remember the guy saying he figured whoever was there had left. He opened the door and looked outside, but didn't see anyone. He then told me that he worked in that area in a department, and he said that they didn't need help with anything. He told me that as a cashier, I probably would not be asked to help with anything back there anyways. So I was told that I could clock out and leave, and he would try to figure out what was going on, and so I left. After that, I never heard anything more about it. I don't know what that woman was up to or who she even was. She probably didn't even work at the Walmart, and looking back, that was really weird. I'm a truck driver and drive semis all over the country. I'm still fairly new to the job, but I have already had a really creepy experience. This took place several months ago. It was nighttime, but not that late yet. I was on the highway and had been driving for a while. The roads were not bad, but there was a decent amount of cars on them. I use a CB radio while driving like other truckers, so I've talked to the other drivers on the road before. On this night, the highway was kind of windy, but it was a road I had not been on yet, so I was not familiar with it. As I was making my way, I heard someone mention me over the CB radio. I was not sure as to who it was. I didn't recognize them, but I answered it. When I did, a man told me that up ahead on the road there had been a crash, and it looked like the road was going to be blocked for a while. He said that he advised me to take the next exit if there was one up ahead. Then I could find a way around the spot and then get back on the highway, because they would not be moving anytime soon. I responded and told him thanks for the heads up. I could not see that far up the road, but it was apparently a ways up, and also the road had curves in it. My map was not showing a slowdown, but I figured that might be because it had just happened. So I looked to the right and hoped that there would be an exit before this crash. And very shortly after that, I saw one. So without hesitation, I took it. When I pulled off the highway, I saw that there was a very quiet-looking road, and that was it. There were no visible gas stations or rest stops or anything, not even houses. It was just road and wild land. I was hoping to find a road on the left of this one, because that was the direction that I needed to go. Or I was at least hoping that this road would curve to the left, but it didn't look like it was going to. When I had made it maybe a quarter of a mile down the road, I had not seen any other connecting roads yet, but I saw something else. There were several men who walked out a ways in front of me from the side of the road. They were now standing in the center of it. I had not seen them until they walked right out into the road because it was so dark over there, but these guys just walked up and started blocking the way. I obviously had to slow down, and I had no idea what was going on. As I continued to slow, the guys just looked at me. This was a bad situation. When I had finally come to a stop, one of the guys came up to my driver's door. I opened the window a little bit and looked down at him. The guy told me to get out, and I asked why. He did not tell me why, but he just told me to get out again. The other guys were just standing there. I asked the guy who he was, but he didn't answer me. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't just turn the truck around. It was too large. I decided to just take my chances and drive forward. I hit the gas, and my truck slowly started to move. As I went forward, I got lucky as the men jumped out of my way so I didn't hit them. I kept driving down the street, and I called the cops eventually and reported what had happened. Then I turned on another road which had a spot that I could turn around on. After I was able to go back, the men were not at the same spot anymore. Maybe they were just hiding in the woods though, but I merged back onto the highway, and when I went up the road, there was absolutely no crash or anything, not even a little bit of a slowdown. I realized that it might have all been a trap. There had never been a crash or any kind of traffic jam. The guy probably told me to go down that road so that they could stop me and do who knows what. I'm just glad that I got away.